Dr. Alan Thomas is a developmental psychologist, author and a visiting fellow at the Institute of Education. For the last 20 years he's been researching how children learn, and as part of this research he has studied home education and written a book about informal learning. I recently met him at HESFES, the Home Educators Summer Festival, and I spoke to him about his discoveries.
Well, I'll talk from my own research, which is on how children learn. I think that what these home educating parents have done, and I must have worked with about 200 families altogether, they have demonstrated to the world, to the scientific world, a new approach to education and to learning. Some children at home learn through structured methods with a curriculum and so on. Even then it's very different from school because it's one-to-one. There's very little in the way of failure because children, if they've got a problem, then they deal with it there and then. So there's no marking and testing and moving on. There's no waste of time. It's very intensive, which means that it can be usually confined to about an hour or two in the morning. That's if it's structured. And the rest of the day is free for other activities. And I suspect it's because of that parents come to realise how much they learn outside structured activities. And so they tend to move away from them. Some become completely autonomous or informal, as I call it, where they have no structure whatsoever. So basically what I'm saying is, however they do it, almost however they do it, it's different from school. Although, to be honest, there are one or two families who somehow or other manage to manage a school timetable at home, although I think it's virtually impossible to do that. The difference between a structured and an informal or autonomous education is almost total. Structured education demands sequence, demands curriculum setting, demands that children learn what they're told to learn. In autonomous education, they choose what they want to learn. We've tried to understand in my research, in my most recent book, how it is that children, without any structure whatsoever, still acquire a good balanced education of the kind we just talked about. And I mentioned this to a home educator once, and they said, "Good bloody luck to you, mate. It's very hard to do." And it is. However, my co-researcher and I, Harriet Patterson, we've come up with a theory that all you have to do is to live in the culture in order to learn to operate in that culture. That is all you need to do. We've also tried to understand how children actually learn within that culture. What I mean by the culture is just for reading, for example, instead of Janet and John or phonics and so on, the world is a literate world around you. There's a street name, there's your name, there's all these sorts of things that surround you. Children are exposed to these all the time. That's just one example. But in general, what I'm saying is that children will simply absorb the culture around them. And they do this through observation. You know, they've got eyes and ears. They pick up language. They observe what they see. They do it through play. Play provides tremendous opportunities at an age between 7 and 11, for example, when it would be quite scorned in school and only seen as a recreation. And they learn by following their own interests. They learn in real life. In school, you say, well, if I buy 10 apples at 15p each, how much is that going to cost? At home, it's how much money have I got? How many apples can I get? These are real problems, and you acquire your learning in that way. And that kind of learning has been demonstrated outside home education. It's called street learning. That is quite well known. The children can acquire mathematical understanding that way. In fact, I documented one child's learning of maths. Her mother had between the ages of 7 and 11, had that pile of exercise books detailing everything a child had done, learning autonomously. And that was too much for me to handle. So I just took out anything that had mathematical content. And it was amazing. All bits and pieces here and there, regressions, advances. You could not categorize it like you can in structured education, saying they did this, 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 and this. And yet, by the age of 11, she had covered, without realizing it, without knowing it, with never having studied maths, the same amount of maths that a primary school child had acquired. She was not a mathematical genius, just ordinary. Didn't like maths that much, but she learned what she needed to operate in society. In fact, the one thing that wasn't mentioned even, so difficult is it to understand autonomous education, was the child learning to read, to tell the time. Only one mention of it, yet that child learned it all the time. It just happened during the course of everyday living, being exposed to your culture, wanting to know when the next TV program is on. Time becomes important to you. When it's important to you, you learn it. And I think, finally, children are born, as we put it, predisposed to learn about the culture they're born into. They do this from the moment they're born. They're looking around them. They learn language and so on. There is no reason why they can't go on living in the same way. Of course, there's knowledge that's outside that. There's knowledge about astrophysics, about dinosaurs and so on, that you don't see dinosaurs in the street. However, if they've got an interest in dinosaurs, you can go and find out about dinosaurs. That's part of our culture too, to seek information about things that are not in the culture. And that's how these children get educated.